So this is 2 years ago, I think we first set this up. The intention being that we have an annual meeting with the police. And certainly the learning, I think, from the last annual meeting with the police was that we were presented with a lot of statistical information on the day, as it were, which people were reflecting on the day, and I think, and I would argue that because of the way it was presented, we were taking in information on the time, which meant that we didn't get necessarily into a debate with the police about, well, okay, what were the particular issues, etc., etc. So what I've attempted to do this time round is I've let members should have a copy of this, which is all of the latest police and crime statistics, at least ways up until December. I don't think there's been another one published since then, but that's the latest I've got. We also went out via your Harlow. We also went out to ask the public whether or not they had any particular questions that they would like to be addressed. And then we then attempted to, we've got a number of questions that came back from the public. There were a number of questions that some councillors raised. And I then attempted with one of the officers to sit down and see whether or not it was possible to group them. And we grouped the questions into what I've highlighted as, first ones was what I call high level questions, such as violence against a person up 10%, sexual offences up 20%, etc. What needs to be done to be tackling those sort of issues, so statistically looking at that. And then there were questions such as, will the police in Harlow consider adopting a strategy in full part known as Project Zeal to reduce shoplifting and Nottinghamshire police were cited. And then there were issues about, well, according to police stats, around 40% of crimes were concluded as not able to prosecute the suspect, or around someone was trying to get at to what does that mean. And then there were some issues around the police approach to work. And then, so for example, people, certainly members of the public were raising questions about visible police presence, what's happened to having on the beat police on bicycles, such as a few years ago. And is it not time to put more neighbourhood policing more visibly available? Those sort of issues. There were a number of those. And then there was some site-specific stuff about if there, for example, is there anything being done about the increased number of cars, particularly in Church Langley? Is there any reason why Potter Street and Prentice Place on cars that can't have speed cameras? So there was a whole range of questions. And in all, there were 26 questions. Now, in terms of the debate that we'll be having, or the meeting we'll have with the police, it's a 2-hour meeting, basically, 7:30 to 9:30, which means we're not going to get through all of these questions there. So the questions, I suppose, for us this evening are, which particular questions do we want to raise at that meeting? And then which other questions could we ask the police to, we can give them the questions in advance and ask for them to give us some sort of written responses, etc., which could then be collated in with the, and certainly I think in terms of particularly the ones that will come from the public, I think the public have asked, we asked the public to ask questions, the public have asked the questions, we need to seem to be sort of acting on those questions. So I think there's a number of those where we could specifically ask the police if they could come up with some responses. So, in terms of going through this, then from my own point of view, I would like us to concentrate on the high level questions. I want us to be asking, I mean, you've seen the latest statistics. I'm concerned that a number of them, with the exception of antisocial behaviour, which seems to have gone down, quite considerably, gone down by 30%. Antisocial behaviour appears to have gone down by 30%. If you look at the police statistics across the county as a whole, that seems to be a pattern right the way across the county. Now, when we've spoken about this to others, people have said, well, is that function of COVID? Is it a function of people not being out and about? It may well be. It may well be, who knows? There's that. On the other hand, we notice that, for example, violence against the person has gone up by 10%. Sexual offences have gone up by 20%. I mean, robberies has gone up, robbery of business property has gone up a huge amount, but there's only very, very small numbers, so I wouldn't, percentage-wise, I wouldn't. But in terms of racial and religiously aggravated offences have gone up by 30%, so that just so that we're clear in terms of number, that's gone up from 135 to 175. Hate crime has gone up from 250 to 330. Domestic abuse, which I know is being picked up by group of officers, group of counsellors that are looking at that, has gone up by 14%. High risk domestic abuse has gone up by 19.6%, 20%. So there are a number, and also my other concern is around the solve rates. And if you look at the solve rates for quite a number of the areas appear to be going down. So what's that about? So from my point of view, I want to be having a discussion with the police on those high level issues, and for them to be discussing with us, well, okay, what are the patterns here? What are the patterns here in Harlow? How does it compare with the rest of the county? And what are they specifically? What are they specifically doing, and what's being done in terms of the Safer Harlow Partnership, etc. And it may well be that at some point, once we've had the local discussion, it may well be that we also at some point want to invite the Police and Crime Commissioner along for a discussion with us about, well, okay, what he sees as the priorities for the town and the policing in the town, and what can we also do in relation, in discussion with our own community safety team, etc. So that's where I'm coming from. I don't know, others have views. Jane.
Thank you, Tony. The first thing, I'm really glad you said, you made the point about residents' questions, because I think every resident that's asked a question needs an answer. And we really have to commit to doing that, because if people are paying their police and fire crime commissioner contribution and the council invites them to ask a question, I think they would be furious if they didn't have a response. So I think that's absolutely crucial, and I would like to understand as a result of this discussion how that response, who's going to take that forward and how that will happen. I'm not necessarily saying it has to be the answer they're looking for, because we may not be in a position to give it, but I think any member of the public that's taken the time to contribute should get a response. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And then I think the other point that you made, which I think is absolutely right, I'm sitting on the domestic abuse group, and it really is chilling to see the rise in crimes of that nature, and rape crimes as well, which I think we pretty much all agree must not usually perpetrated against women. And I thank you for asking Adam to send around the full stats, and I guess there is some comfort. I'm being ironic, but some comfort in seeing that is not only happening in Harlow, that is a trend across the county and no doubt across the country. But it really is, I mean, I think utterly chilling to see that. And, you know, I really think that given we have this working group focused on that, you know, we need to really understand what's behind that, what's been done, because it draws together those two pieces of work this committee is progressing. And then, you know, I think also, in the spirit of scrutiny, where there have been improvements, for example, antisocial behaviour or, you know, burglaries and that kind of thing, one I think would probably fairly reasonably suggest that is to do with the nature of the time that we've had. That people have been at home and there's been less opportunity for antisocial behaviour or successful burglaries because people are around more. So I just think, you know, I would like to hold the police's feet to the fire on these statistics, with, you know, those particular areas of focus. One, why, you know, what are we doing? What is the response? What is the police reaction to these increases? And not to be, I guess, fobbed off with a suggestion that there are improvements which somehow offset those other issues. I think it's a really worrying picture. Yes, and then I do think that there was a trend in the questions from the public around, I'm not laughing because it's not as serious, the use of scooters. You know, that was an item, an issue that came up time and time again, and I think while that's not, I'm sure, I suspect, Tony, under your definition of high level, I think it's nonetheless clearly a very, you know, widely felt, well, on the basis of this, it would seem, and you know, I have conversations with constituents who have the same view, and I would have the same view myself personally. So, yeah, those are my comments on the item.
Nothing. Chair, considering today's Internet Safety Day, there seems to be nothing in here that segregates any cyber-related crime, from cyberbullying, which could lead to potential death of teenagers and young children. There's no mention of grooming, whether police called in for potential grooming cases. Theft, other theft, phishing emails. How many people get an email, your package is saying please enter your bank details here, bank accounts are emptied when the police are then called. There seems to be no mention of that on any of these reports, yet we are putting out as a council advice for not just children, parents, for elderly people who get caught out year in, year out from this new technology. There seems to be no prevention, and if it's not been registered as a statistic, how bad is the problem? Is it just it's filed under any other business? If it's not clear what that percentage is, how as we as custodians and elected officials who are there to protect our residents able to go out and educate them on the potential dangers that are out there? This, by working in the IT industry, it moves faster than I can keep track of.
Yeah.
How are people and normal residents who do this day to day, apps change, scams change, how many people get phone calls from, this is Virgin Media or BT, you've got problems with your internet, I get a few, someone who's more elderly or not so savvy, get calls, think it is, start telling them details, and before you know it, they're losing thousands, or they've committed to something that's opened them up to all sorts of potential problems. And why isn't that being reported?
Yeah, when I read these figures, you know, they're quite appalling, really. I have 4 or 5 times over the last 4 or 5 years, due to the fact that their part of the council tax has always risen more than anything else. This year is no different. This year in the report, we were told that there will be more police officers in Essex than there's ever been in history. Now, that might be fine, but what are they doing? As far as this is concerned, not a lot. So I'm very upset that they keep charging us more and doing less. Now, I know that cybercrime seems to be the biggest thing on the increase. I understand that it's a £3 billion industry. Banks don't seem to take too much notice. Sometimes they pay losses, sometimes they don't. And I think it's about time the police, the government and other organisations got together and stop this. And I think that's what's going to happen with these large companies now. The government are actually saying that they will be fined if they just continue to allow these scams to go on. Now, we've got a lot of questions to ask at the next meeting, and obviously they'll be placed in order of priority, but quite rightly, as Eugenie said, and we've already agreed in the pre-meet, that those members of the public must be given an answer, whether it's asked on the night or whether the police have to come back to us and give us an answer. It's absolutely vital that every single one of those questions are answered, and that member of the public who raised the question gets a proper answer. But, you know, as far as the police are concerned, I think there's a lot of problems for the police on both sides. I don't believe that they get anywhere near the protection they should get from the legal system. And at the same time, I think that, I don't know how many police officers there are in the country, but there are thousands. And like everything, one bit of bad news affects them all. 500 bits of good news, no one takes any notice of. Yes, they've got to put their house in order, and they've got to start proving to us that they can control these crimes and control these criminals. The law doesn't seem to help them, because we have every week now violent criminals, murderers, rapists coming to the end of their sentence and getting out. That wouldn't happen in the USA, and it certainly doesn't happen in parts of Europe. But in the good old UK, you can do really serious crimes, spend half of your time in prison and get out and then looked after for the rest of your life by the state. It's about time things changed. And it's not just the police that are in this. We have to help the police, the government have to help the police, and then the police should be doing the job that they pay for.
What I would like to do is agree. So is somebody else come in?
Councillor Sager's raised an issue about online safety and cyberbullying. That's not currently within the list of questions. If Councillor Sagers wants to email either myself or Hannah with the questions that he might want added to this, but we're as officers happy to do that if the merits are not that.
What I'm going to propose to do, I'm going to listen to the debate this evening. I think what I now need to do in one of the offices is I'll go away, we'll go through them in terms of, I think, as I said, I think I've got your agreement that we will concentrate on some of the high level stuff. In terms of, we'll look at something on, you come up with something on the cyber crime, etc., whatever the question is there. Those are the ones we'll prioritise in terms of the debate within that we'll have with the police. But equally, as far as the rest of these questions are concerned, we'll be putting these questions to the police, not necessarily for them to answer. We're not looking for full responses at the meeting, but we are asking for them to come back with responses to each of these questions in turn, which can then be added to the papers, etc., that will go out following the debate, so at least the public can see that their questions have been raised and that those questions have been answered. or at least does that sound like a reasonable way forward? Yeah, and again, just so that we're clear, I'll try and do that so that they're circulated beforehand to members of the committee, as it were, the questions that are going to be answered, so that just in case if there's anything you think, well, actually, I'm not got this quite right, can we look at this or whatever, then, so at least we will know, you know, the issues we're looking at. So.
Tony, I wanted to say the other area I think of major concern is the racial, religious, aggravated offences and the hate crime. That would be another high level. I mean, it's in there just to make the case for that. But otherwise, to be honest, I'm perfectly happy that you will make a good choice from what we've talked about today. And I think everybody, the answers are given.
Well, what we can do is, I'll tell you, we'll attempt to try and do that, circulate it to members, and then we can then look at, well, okay, who's going to ask the particular questions. So, for example, currently, the question on racial and religious aggravated offences is number 2 on here, as it happens. I mean, these weren't put in any particular order, but it's come out So in terms of the high-level stuff we've got at the moment, the first one was violence against a person, up 10%, sexual offences up 20%, domestic violence up 15%. What needs to be done to tackle these issues? Racial and religious aggravated offences and hate crime up 30%. What needs to be done to tackle these issues? Self breaks down in the majority of categories. Why is this, and what needs to be done to address the issues and reassure the public? There was from your own, someone put here from your own data, you've not solved a single rape case in the past 12 months. And they said how women are supposed to feel. So that was about looking at what's happening as far as the sexual offences are concerned. And then the wider questions that are around police approach to work, and then the site-specific ones. All of those questions will be on.
Yeah.
Right, are we happy with that? Are we happy with that approach? Matthew? And so,
one question. With the caveat to that, are we also going to ask, unsolved, is it
Up to conviction, because obviously we are aware that the court system did go into a bit of a sort of storm.
I think we need to understand what they mean by the term solved, basically. I mean, there may well be a debate that we've got solved outcome. What does solved mean? There's another term here as well. They've got percentage DA. I don't know what percentage DA stands for example. Okay. Right, moving on.